Hello, Iris J here with Madrona's Pulse Teachings, Astrology for Healing. I hope this finds you doing well wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. I am chatting with you about the Gemini Full Moon on November 27th. I am on the west coast of Canada. If you watch my channel weekly, you will notice a very different backdrop. So where I am, it's happening really early on the morning of the 27th at 1:17 a.m. So you definitely want to adjust for wherever you are. And it's happening right before 5 degrees, moon in Gemini, sun in Sagittarius. Opening up the energies of this full moon requires talking about the Scorpio new moon a little bit and the way that it has sent us on this wave that really was just carrying us out of eclipse season into this new 6-month cycle, the bigger cycle within the smaller cycle of this new moon into the full moon. And there very much is something potentially becoming illuminated in the Gemini Sagittarius axis of our psyches. And to tell you right now, this is an active full moon. The Mars is with the sun series. The Earth Mother is with the sun, and the sun and the moon are squaring Saturn. So we have a lot of energy with this full moon, and it absolutely is really working within a progressive continuum that has come out of the energies of the past few weeks. So I want to talk to that a little bit, because there's a lot of cycles going on here. And with this full moon, I really do feel that with the Saturn energy, there's an opportunity that something is becoming real. Something new is becoming real for us, and we can be intentional and mindful and work with that energy. And that also might explain why there could be some wavy times, and that has to do with Mars as well. But you know, and wavy in the literal sense of that, like all of this energy, we're coming out of Scorpio, we've been working with Neptune, I'm going to talk about that, but that is water energy, and the waves are just one moment we're here, and the next we're cycling into a rise of emotion, whether it's anger or grief, and then we're dipping with it, and it's just a wavy time. And now this wavy time, which is still very active as I'm posting this video, is carrying us into the Gemini full moon, when we get an illumination in that axis of the seeker and the wisdom maker. Gemini and Sagittarius is such lovely energy for making sense, for understanding. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what might be coming into an illumination for ourselves as we're coming into understanding of something. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. I talk about astrology, weaving it in with spirituality on these complex healing journeys that so many of us are on. I really do appreciate it if you subscribe. It really helps these smaller channels do our thing. If you are someone that, if you're new, you can check it out on my website. But if you're someone that has been following my channel for a while, I have launched Patreon, and I mean, the Cosmic Rhythms group, we've just met once so far. We're going to meet our second time soon, but it's quite lovely for me, I got to say. I think it's going to be quite a gorgeous experience. I'm super grateful to be working with folks on these journeys that are always interconnected. And I think part of being in community on these journeys, especially when we open to the language and symbol and synchronicities of astrology and spirituality and just earth-based consciousness and embodied wisdom, is we really see that we're not alone on these journeys. And there are these cycles that all of us are part of. We're part of them individually in our own drama, but when we see the synchronicities and just the energies that are showing up, and this is what astrology is beautiful, and astrology and community is pretty darn beautiful as well. So this is just some of the tidbits that we're exploring on Patreon. So I do invite you to check that out, and let us journey into this conversation about the Gemini full moon. So, as I said, we're going to have that sun in Sagittarius. We're going to have the moon opposite in Gemini. And then also in Sagittarius, we're going to have the sun conjunct Mars in Ceres. Now, the sun had its exact conjunction with Mars on November 17th. They have been traveling very closely together for weeks. This was part of the energy of our Scorpio new moon. Ceres is part of this too, Earth Mother energy. And the three of them have been traveling through Scorpio. So they were together during this new moon. And during that new moon, they were opposite Uranus, which is very significant energy. And the idea here is that, you know, Uranus there in Taurus, opposite that new moon energy, Uranus radicalizes, it awakens. I really think this image of it charging and actually breaking something open in the psyche, something that might be entirely conscious to us or actually might be unconscious in terms of cognitive understanding. We might just be feeling it. And Uranus had this kind of electrifying open up energy. And then things keep moving. We always keep moving. Even when it doesn't feel like things are moving, things are moving. And so then the trio moved forward in Scorpio, and they came into this trine energy with Neptune, who's retrograde in Pisces. And it's kind of like something breaks open, and then Neptune charges in this quite healing energy. Healing in that it is a spiritualizing energy. It is mystical energy. It is energy beyond all that is in our day-to-day nitty-gritty of details and life on this plane. Neptune is beyond that. Neptune is the reality that is beyond that. And it trines into this energy of the Sun and the Mars together is incredible energy. Okay, and it's part of their cycle, and because of them being together, Mars is entering into a new 2-year cycle, having conjunct the Sun. And then they move on to the third kind of cosmic symphony going on in this progression, in this wave. Sorry, that's Nikita. And they square Saturn. Okay, so the exact square to Saturn happens just before we get to this full moon. The dates for you are, it's exact square of Saturn and the Sun there, right at the entrance into Sagittarius on the 22nd of November. Then Mars is on the 24th, Ceres is on the 25th, and then we come into our full moon, and they're still squaring Saturn, but they've moved on just a little bit, so it's a wider square. And this is significant. And so there's this progression. Uranus opposition wakes something up. Trine from Neptune into this healing energy, opportunity for healing energy. And I think it's really important when we're talking about, even when we're just talking about the word healing, but when we're talking about Neptune, this is energy that is beyond the mind. It's beyond the ego. It is not supposed to make sense right away. It is not supposed, it is much more about intuition and feeling and witnessing the synchronicities that are a language of our interconnected cosmos speaking with us, various dimensions of reality coming together. And Neptune it's not necessarily supposed to make sense in the way that we're trained, literally in a Western context, for meaning to make sense in a very categorical, explicit way. So if things have been a little foggy or confusing, or you're just feeling a lot, that's actually very normal. Okay. I always use the word normal, drawing attention to it, because it's a problematic word. And then we move into Saturn. So Saturn is recently direct. We move into the story of Saturn talking to the Sun and the Mars and Ceres. And this is what is present during this full moon in Gemini, when we may get some cognitive understanding, because Gemini is an information maker, an information seeker. Gemini is an air energy that is quite active and fast in its flipping between objective perspectives of a different situation. And it wants to understand. Gemini energy wants to understand. That's why if you have a lot of Gemini in your chart, it can get quite active in those air realms, and anxiety can be very common with any air energy, because we can get so active in our minds, and that's when anxiety is this complicated relationship between the mind and the body. And so knowing that, we also want to ground during this full moon, since it is a full moon in Gemini, and yet we might be brought into some understanding. And then we have that sun who's entered into Sagittarius, fire energy, that is seeker energy. Gemini's gift is zoning in on details. Sagittarius is the big picture. Sagittarius is, what is spirituality all about? What is religion about? What's philosophy about? It's the big picture, and more than that, it's what does it mean for me? Sagittarius is also very driven by the intuitive fire desire to understand as this being that I am in this life, in this time right now. And so that's the axis that is illuminated, that is activated right now. And all that energy is squaring Saturn. Saturn, who, as I was saying, is newly direct in Pisces, is in this very important moment in its cycle for us individually and collectively, as Saturn makes its way through the final sign of the zodiac before Saturn starts a whole new journey. Those of you that have Saturn in Pisces are have either had or in the process of being in your Saturn returns, or it's a coming. And that's significant too, that you're coming in, if you have your Saturn returns in Pisces, that there's this kind of initiation into a new phase of your life, as the collective is in a finishing stage with Saturn before we all come into a new cycle. Okay, so just knowing that whatever's coming up for you, if you have a significant Saturn transit, is also signaling your connection to something bigger than whatever dramas are playing in your life. And so that square to Saturn as the final in this trio, talking to Uranus, Neptune, Saturn makes things real. Saturn creates the structures so that we can mature, so that we can bring our dreams into this plane, so that we can create boundaries and allow for things to have the energy and the rootedness and the dedication to move forward. And Saturn is doing this in the sign of Pisces, which is incredible for bringing new structures of the spiritual into the day-to-day. Those that have a lot of Pisces energy, allowing Saturn's coming through, and it's allowing a new ground to come into a way of being that doesn't traditionally have any ground. Pisces is the ocean. Pisces has got no boundaries. Pisces is just the dissolving of the ego and oneness with all that is. And so Saturn is creating these boundaries, and Saturn's role in this situation, this conversation with the Sun and Mars in Ceres, is very much Uranus awakens, lets something loose that potentially has been buried for a very long time and now can emerge in a new way in terms of this adult being that we are at this moment in our life. Neptune trines in and brings in this spiritual, mystical energy to it. And then it gets to talk with Saturn, and some boundaries get to be made. And so what is becoming real most likely does have to do with whatever came up during the new moon, November 13th. Knowing that whatever came up in the new moon in November 13th, give or take around that area, also as we've moved through November, absolutely is what came out of the eclipse season. That means eclipse season has us working with these energies for the next 6 months. So this new cycle that we're coming into, which is also signaled by Mars coming into a new cycle in its journey, in its relationship to the sun, we might get illumination, understanding around meaning for that in our life right now. Meaning in terms of our creative drive to create inspired meaning in our lives. This is what Sagittarius is about. This is what Sagittarius is seeking. It's inspired energy. And then that moon in Gemini might allow us to come into a little bit more. It's a great time to journal. It's a great time to talk things through with a friend, a partner, a therapist, an animal, whoever you're talking communication partners are, whatever types of beings they are. But it's a great time to also talk, get the energy out. Gemini, yes, Gemini likes to think and it can write, but Gemini also functions very well when it's talking, and it's another mode of processing information. And so it's a great time coming into this full moon, being with the full moon, giving words to what you've been feeling. If the words aren't coming in that explicit way, that is okay. Just journal with them, expressive. If it's coming more in terms of art or however you express yourself, but it is a time to express so that the emotions, those waves that have been journeying through us and our psyches and our bodies and through life, it's in the world and the collective itself, so that we can give them a little bit of form, because Saturn is here to give them form. And then we move on and we talk about the next cycles that come after. But it is important energy. And also, you know, I mentioned that Ceres is here, but it's lovely that Ceres is here. Because Ceres here, you know, the Sun and Mars together, especially like opposite Uranus, with these big players like Neptune and Saturn, it's a lot of energy. It's intense energy. And Ceres there is also like a gatekeeper of sorts, a gatekeeper potentially from keeping us from going too far. When these two are in Scorpio, too far into our depths, you know, too far in Sagittarius, potentially too far into the imagination. Ceres is there, and she's a grounding force, regardless of what sign she's in. Ceres is a grounding force. She is the Earth Mother. And so she's also the goddess within ourself, because this is our psyche, and wherever this is in your chart, wherever you have that shift from Scorpio into Sagittarius, Ceres is here and the goddess is also coming through. And so whatever is becoming real for us, maybe it's a dream that we've had, maybe it's a new phase of that dream being put into practice, maybe it's part of a relationship, maybe it's part of grief that we've been grief tending for quite some time, releasing itself back into earth so that we can enter into a new journey. However something is becoming real, there is new initiatory energy here coming out of the eclipse, out of the Scorpio full new moon, with the new cycle of Mars. There's a lot of push, and the goddess is here with us as well. What nurtures us? What brings us through the activities in our lives and the relationships in our lives? What brings us into an experience of unconditional love? Because that's also part of what Ceres is here for. And she's absolutely here for what nurtures us. And we're moving, you know, we're shifting from that Scorpio, what nurtures us in the depths of our being and the deep realms of intimacy, and shifting into the questions of what nurtures us when we're making meaning in our life, when we're bringing those depths of who we are in relationship, who we are in our deepest intimacies, into understanding our place within the bigger world. And there's a lot of passion there. And Ceres, the goddess, is there, and she wants to ground us as well into these new journeys that are also aligned with a sustainability, with a nourishing sustainability in terms of our own emotional, psychological, spiritual wellness, and the way that we're also interconnected into the planet, into ecosystems, into different cultures. And so it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy. It's exciting energy. And just spending some time and really sitting with what in me wants to become real, and seeing what comes up with that. Okay. And on that note, I wish you all full moon blessings. I will have another video or two up before then, but I'm still sending new full moon. I'm wanting to say new moon and full moon opposite today. I'm still a little bit jet lagged from getting across the country and then taking ferries. But anyway, I hope that you're all well. Sending blessings. Be well.